under the aggressive government of the of the people who of Al-Qaeda and other groups there that are oppressing them, and as he calls it, drinking their blood and putting them in a very bad economical situation, and just plain criminals, which also find space there to act and bring great damage to the simple people, the simple population of Kosovo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm a little concerned that you've taken most of the points that we meant to cover in our mission here to Israel, because everything you've said is absolutely correct and shows great insight into the situation in Kosovo. And of course, one of the points we've been trying to make during our visit here is to show how the application of the principles of Kosovo were to happen, and I will explain in a minute why I don't think it will happen, but were to happen, why it is a danger to all of the countries that are facing jihad terrorism, and most particularly to Israel. One of the things that is most damaging to a country that is trying to defend its interests is to create a sense of inevitability. That everybody, all the powerful people in the world tell you, this is the way it's going to be, it's been decided without you, you have nothing to say. You can argue all you like, you can present all the legal arguments you like, you can appeal to justice, appeal to recognize standards of morality, and everybody will say that doesn't matter because we've already decided otherwise. You have only one option, and that is to accept what has been demanded of you. This is the situation that we found ourselves in a year ago when we began this effort in Washington on behalf of Kosovo. It was all wrapped up. It was all decided. Kosovo would be independent by the end of 2006. There was nothing more to be said. And we felt that if we went to the American people and to the American, let's say the politically informed segment of the American population, and told them exactly what Kosovo meant in the context of the larger global struggle against Islamic radicalism, that people would begin to understand there was more at stake here than some leftover business from the breakup of Yugoslavia. We told them that everything you think you know about American policy, America is leading the world against global jihad terror, America is against drug trafficking, America is against slavery, where the criminal gangs traffic women and even children around the world. All the things you think you know, they are stood on their head in Kosovo.
America is in favor of the rule of law.
Yes, America is in favor of the rule of law. On the contrary, America, when I say America, what I mean is a handful of bureaucrats at the State Department and a few congressmen, many of whom have been in the pocket of the Albanian lobby for many, many years, have decided, and almost nobody else is paying any attention, have decided we must support independence for a minority. And this is something we have to be very clear about. Everybody in Washington wants to talk about the Albanian majority in Kosovo. There is no Albanian majority in Kosovo. There is an Albanian Muslim minority within Serbia, which is concentrated in Kosovo. If a Jew in Israel goes to Galilee, is he a minority in Israel? No, he's a member of the majority population in Israel. It's just that there's a minority that's concentrated in Galilee. He doesn't become a minority because he goes into a part of his own country in which somebody else happens to be quite numerous. And this is the kind of games they play with us in Washington. In any case, our view was twofold. One is, if the truth could be brought to the American public and American policymaker and broaden it beyond the handful of officials and congressmen that were determined to bring this policy to fruition, that it would begin to slow the process down. There would be more people asking questions, more people willing to look at a change of course. But we also knew that we were up against a time clock because the other side was getting increasingly desperate, that unless they could bring their policy to fruition by a set deadline, they knew that maybe people would start paying more attention to it and the whole program might start to fall apart. So first they postponed it. They said, well, it'll be after the Serbian elections in January, which is itself a lie, by the way, because if they thought they could have imposed it by the end of last year, they would have done it. and they didn't feel they were able to do it. They still think they could find some way to pressure or buy Serbia into agreeing to this. And lo and behold, even after the election, Serbia was more resolute than ever that they would not allow it. They completely misplayed the Russian card. The Russians, we hear about a year ago, were willing to make a trade on Kosovo. We'll overlook, you could steal Kosovo from Serbia, we could play some games in South Asia, Abkhazia, we can make a deal here. And the Americans said, oh, no, 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 Kosovo is unique. Why is it unique? Well, because we say it's unique. And since we make the rules and we say it's unique, it's unique. And the Russians said, well, we're not very impressed by this argument. And they said, we're a permanent member of the Security Council. If Serbia doesn't agree to it, we won't agree to it. And the Chinese position is very much the same. There's an irony here, of course. Here's the United States pretending to be the upholder of the rule of law in international affairs, and we have the Americans tearing up the UN Charter, and the Russians and the Chinese upholding it. Well, you know, politics is like this sometimes. You make your friends where you find them. The other thing is that the significance of Kosovo as a presence in international affairs is inescapable. Everybody knows, even people who deny the obvious, that this will have a profoundly destabilizing effect on every country in the world that has an ethnic or religious minority. Indonesia, for example, the biggest Muslim country in the world, you think would immediately side with the Kosovo Albanians. But all indications are they're against this, or one of the non-permanent members of the Security Council, because they have their own separatist movements within Indonesia, including one in Aceh, which is an incredibly radical Islamic movement. The other thing is, and this is something that I'm sure everybody who understands the phenomenon of jihad terrorism will instantly understand. Underlying all of this is an element of fear and threat of violence. When we were in Brussels with Bishop Artemia, the Bishop of Kosovo, who, by the way, was supposed to lead this mission here to Israel, but had to stay in Kosovo at the last minute because the UN fact-finding mission was coming to Kosovo. When we were in Brussels with him, we talked to a Hungarian member of the European Parliament who said, well, of course it will be very, very painful for Serbia to lose Kosovo, et cetera, but you understand we'll have all these protections for the Serbs will be protected, and so on and so forth. And we asked him, wait a minute, you can be telling us about all these protections for the Serbs. We've had 150 churches and monasteries destroyed. We've had 2/3 of our community run out. The entire Jewish community has been run out. 2/3 of the Roma, 2/3 of the Croat. Aside from the fact we do not believe you, why do you keep promising all these protections unless you admit that there are many violent and intolerant people against whom we need to be protected? Why do you want to reward their violence and intolerance by giving them state power? And he looked us in the eye and he said, because we're afraid of them. Now, there are 40 million Muslims already in Europe. Israel already has a problem, compared to, say, its relationship with the United States, that there's so much Muslim pressure on Europe, and Europe is already so becoming Eurabia, that they're afraid of this population growing in their own midst. It feeds anti-Semitism in Europe. It feeds hostility to Europe and Israel. Can we imagine how much further this trend will go if we take this step on Kosovo? Now, and this leads me to my last point, and I'll turn it back over to my colleagues.